Hey guys, it's your humble host, or Kayla if you prefer, so I'm back with hopefully what seems to be a quick video. I hope. I wanted to kind of talk about something, and you'll see what this is on screen. It's called light gliders, and this is just an example. I'm going to use this as an example. I'm not trying to shit on these people. I'm not trying to talk with any sort of malice towards them. There's just something I wanted to point out because I feel it's very important. So anybody who has grown up with Christian media, that is the topic. You'll find that there's a stigma of very poor quality, poor story execution, if not lesson execution. The characters just either look scary or very lazily done. The overall environment is just total and utter crap. Now, for those of you who have also been on my channel for 6 to 7, possibly 8 years, there was something else that came up called Faith Kids. Now, that was another Christian production aimed at kids where the animators used a very cheap 3D animation program, and the renderation was just horrible. It was lazy, and granted, they were belting these out, but still, you would think you want to take a little bit more quality and care. As a friend of mine put it, because we were discussing this 1 or 2 days ago, and when it comes to Christian media, particularly aimed at kids, they're focused more on the overall lesson than they are on the actual story and what's being portrayed in the story, how the characters interact, what the characters look like, so that sort of thing. I had this come across my desk about 1 to 2 weeks ago, and I just couldn't leave it alone, and I was kind of intrigued by it. And one of the things that I noticed is just the overall quality and their constant recycle of the background image. Like you have this one here where it's a dank cave, cracked ground, underground, something somewhere, and you have a theme on top of it as be humble. I wouldn't quite use a dank cave for that, but when you scroll down here, you have the same image with a different theme on top of it. Again, neither theme fits. This one is let us not get tired of doing what is good, and they're using the New Living Translation, which I totally freaking despise that in the New International Version because it dumbs down stuff and takes away some of the deeper meanings of the verses. So I do not use either one. Just a pet peeve of mine. But so anyway, yeah, you have recycling of images, and the overall story of this one, you have 7 light gliders. There's an academy that the player goes through. Again, this is directed at ages 6 through 12, and they're fighting against something called the Blight. And so far from what I've seen, because there's not an actual image of the Blight, the Blight is like portrayed as like rotting tree roots or whatnot. And that's kind of it from what I've seen, little videos of the game and whatnot. They do have a website, but there's not a whole lot of explanation as to what the Blight is, what the land is, and I know this is for 6 through 12, but here's the problem. Because I'm going to show you something that's very high quality, it is very attractive looking in art style, execution, but the context in the Christian realm is really freaking bad. Because I was drawn to this particular cartoon until I read up how they went about developing it and what exactly is enlaced with it. So anyway, so the reason why I have a pet peeve with a lot of this stuff, because when you have something that's poor quality and you just slap something together, you're not going to have that big of an audience. There is no room for expansion because, like, I'll show you an example. So let's take a look at this character, because one of the theme cards I actually went through and redid from the ground up. This character, this particular light glider is named Tora. Tora is either facing this way or this way, and you can tell the image is flipped because when she's this way, the helmet's on this side. When she's flipped the other way, the helmet is to her right. So, and I'll show you. So this is her on the left. And then there's one, the theme restore, or not restore, rescue, of her being on the left. Because the overall image and design, especially the armor, which is a hot mess within itself, cannot easily be replicated, meaning they don't have a whole lot of time to replicate this. And this might be done in Illustrator, I think. And when you're trying to digitally paint in Illustrator, it's a lot more intricate, a lot more tedious, and a real pain in the A than it is with Photoshop. Because, yeah, shapes, and then you have to put certain effects on those shapes. But because the complication of the overall character design, you can't do a whole lot with it. You can't move around. You don't know how it looks in various positions because you just have too much detail. Rule of thumb when it comes to developing characters, and this is especially true for animation, you have to be able to create a design that you can replicate over and over and over and over again and with efficiency. And on top of that, you have to know how it looks from the back view, the front view, the left view, and the right view. The reason why this is important because you have a design that you can move around at a 360 degree angle and all over the grid and do various things with. If you do not have a design that you can do this with, your design has failed. It's too complicated, or you haven't taken enough time to flesh it out, a mixture of those two, possibly more problems. So, the characters themselves do not look bad, but again, this is another kind of hot mess. This one's not as complicated. The color scheme is a bit smaller, or color palette, and I like this one a little bit better than Dora. This one is named Hembika. I believe I pronounced that right. She comes from Africa. So not all these designs are bad. Like you have, I forget what her name is, but she's supposed to be from India. This is just her normal clothes, which I think she's actually really pretty and really well done. But again, she doesn't move. There is no movement to these characters. You have another nice looking character here. Again, he's more simplistic than the others, but still, in that simplicity, he's more defined, and his color palette's not that big. So again, there's no movement. There is no interaction between the characters and the theme itself. So speaking of the theme that I redid real quick, so I chose rescue, and let me flip this screen over to here. Yoink. So again, this is the one dealing with Torah, and I wanted to redo the theme rescue. Again, it's kind of like a deep theme to try to discuss with 6 to 12-year-olds. You can do like a surface level lesson, which is fine, but that is more of a complicated and nuanced issue, and there's so much that goes into that. Not saying you can't create simplified lessons for kids out of very deep topics, but you got to be careful because then you'd water down and you can lose the overall message. Anyway, so with that being said, I don't know if these are supposed to be clouds. I don't know if this is supposed to be a tunnel. And you have one of these hedgehog looking things. Oh, I don't think I've showed you guys that yet. Let me flip back over to the other screen real quick because this is, again, as I'm sure you saw, they have these weird hedgehog looking knockoff things, and I swear I have seen Sonic fan art look similar to this, just without the nose and the mouthpiece, but I've seen something similar to this in Sonic fan art before. So when I've seen these things, they're called belittles or glittles. I have no idea. I have no freaking idea what these are. But yeah, there's no variation or personality to these things either. It is just the same little creature colored differently, made to look like there's multiple ones. So yeah. You do have it here in the background with the light shining on, but again, when I first looked at this image, I couldn't tell what that was. I didn't even notice it until I actually started to break down the image to recreate it from the ground up. So yeah, it's kind of a problem. I didn't even differentiate that it was there at first. Um, and then speaking of not knowing what was there at first, you have, because this is supposed to be like a dark colored theme, you have bright colors slapped on top of it, which kind of takes away attention from the overall theme. If any of you have taken classes for graphic design and creating advertisements, whether that be magazine covers, pages, what have you, they talk about where you want your viewers' eyes to start first. You want the middle of the page to be the first thing that attracts them, and then move around in a circle. How do you want it to go? So just from this, the rescue theme should be the very first thing that I look at that should catch my attention right away. But it's not. It's this big white lettering light gliders. Theme of the week, which you shouldn't even need to put theme of the week, as it's pretty obvious. And then you have this more detailed logo, more high quality logo in the right hand corner here. And because of the quality of it in comparison to the overall theme, it takes away, again, attention from the theme, and you have that same purple, white, just slapped down there on the bottom. Now, when it comes to the character itself, because I've recreated her also, because her armor was a hot freaking mess, too much colors, the details are way too complicated, especially for something aimed at kids. Again, if you cannot move your character around in their costume and what they're wearing and what they're doing in various angles and perspectives, and your design is flawed. You need to rethink your design. And again, I'm not an expert. I haven't gone through college, but I've been drawing for a little while now, and I've watched various videos. And even the experts will tell you this, that you need to have a design that you can replicate time and time again, and they'll tell you with more efficiency and to be sure you can actually know what the character looks like in different positions in that type of costume or what have you. So, and something else too that I've kind of noticed is there's too much yellow. Her hair bleeds into the armor. You have a mix between space armor and medieval armor. You have these glow-looking things, which I weren't sure was supposed to be wires or what it was supposed to be. Another problem that I saw, and don't get me wrong, I like the overall look of the character. I think she's cute. This particular one has a personality to where she likes to improvise. She can improvise on the fly, and it works for her. She doesn't need to go out into a mission with a plan. She could just improvise on the spot, which is not a bad skill to have. But here's the thing. Another problem with her design is her chibi form. Now, I don't have issues with chibi characters overall, but when it comes to them holding stuff that's supposed to go on their head or stuff that's supposed to go on their body, the proportions get really, really freaking wacky. Her helmet is too small. Now, they do have a YouTube channel to where there's an animation to where another light glider and two players take off their helmet, but instead of doing the full motion to where it be a, let me show you from the side view, where they take off the helmet like this and bring it to their chest, you have a circle like this because you have to make room and allow room for that big helmet to come off that really big head, so you have to really stretch the arms. They have it to where the masks are just kind of take off like this, like they just sit on their face like that. So that is the reason why I don't draw chibi characters, because it's not, for me, there's a lot more you have to compensate for than you would with a normal sized character. So let me show you my version real quick, and I want to talk about the quality and why I feel it's important as to why Christian media really needs to stop being so lazy with stuff. So, as I said, I wasn't sure if those lions were supposed to be clouds, so I went with clouds. I assumed clouds. I also played a little bit more with the theme, rescue, to where you have the light coming behind the actual word itself. The first thing that you look at and see is that bright big circle, sunlight, whatever that is, coming through the clouds. And then I took the purple because I did like the purple, but I did do a gradient on it just to kind of tone it down somewhat. And they had a version to where it was just the shield. It's subtle enough, but it gets the point across. Um, and then I went through, and I'm going to show you the light version, because on this one I did darken her a little bit so she doesn't pop out as much against a dark colored theme. But she still has some interaction with it because you have light, excuse me, you have light from the beam kind of reflecting off of her and kind of bouncing on her, so to speak. So the lighting's not perfect, but there's still some sort of interaction between the theme and the character. Um, I could have done something a little bit more, and I kind of wanted to where she was either looking up or some more of a deeper image. But again, this is targeted at children 6 through 12. So when it comes to Tora, I try to keep the mix between spacesuit to medieval, which again is kind of a bizarre mix, but not too bad. I didn't include the helmet. I tried. It was ridiculous to make her hold it because even with her head sized down, she still would be holding this big fishbowl looking thing and trying to position it, and all that armor would just get covered up. So I just did away with it. Another thing that I did not add, there is their glider or saucer or whatever this is called, precariously positioned right behind her at an angle. And because of the bleeding, again, you have the rockets or the boosters or whatever those are called in the back of this glider looking thing bleeding in with her arm and her gauntlet. I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to be, glove type thing. No, I did not add that thing either. I try to keep the overall color scheme, which is yellow, dark brown, gray, and I took that color palette, simplified it, and I did keep the jewels, lights, whatever these are supposed to be, and I put them back on. I even did a bigger version just to kind of add to it a little bit more. She has a waist support here, which I can only assume is similar to that of the one that Buzz Lightyear wears. If you look up Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, or even from Toy Story, he has like this rib part. It almost looks like a big version of a medical tube around his waist, so that supports him. And so I kind of took that idea and I put it to her legs. So overall, I'm not saying this is like way better or perfect or whatnot, but this is something more simplified to the point, more proportioned. The lighting's done better. It's not so complicated, in my opinion. And when it comes to the overall theme, she does have some interaction because she's darkened. You have that light bouncing off of her. So in a way, she's part of the theme, yet at the same time not. Now, this, as I said, took me 1 to 2 weeks to do because it was on and off, and I could not leave it alone. The reason why this is so important, and it's a big pet peeve of mine, is when I was growing up, I wanted to be a part of Christian media. I wanted to be a Christian artist. But the more I looked at it, the more I saw, the more I realized I couldn't relate to it. A lot of it was very, very much in poor quality, worse off than what it is now. There's actually starting to be some more competent stuff coming out. There's a 3D movie called David, which looks phenomenal. You have people who have worked in Pixar, DreamWorks, on movies like Tangled, I want to say Kung Fu Panda, working on this movie. So it actually looks really nice. But that's very few and far between. Now, the reason why these Christian producers, companies, and I understand they possibly don't have a lot of money, but I feel a lot of them take the cheapest route and don't exude a lot of passion for what they want to put out. Let me show you something that is really high quality, but again, I was drawn to this until I looked at the context, just going like, oh crap. So this is why you want high quality stuff. So let me talk about what this is. I don't watch the show, but I know enough about it. In a nutshell, so you have, it's either Ida or Ida. This is a witch. And her mission, like this little thing right here, is the Demon King. I do believe the show pokes at the Bible just a little bit. The plot or the lore of the show goes is you have the Demon King, he lost his crown, therefore he lost his power. She's once ruler of the world and she's trying to help him get his crown back. You have the main character who starts at the beginning of the show getting sent off to some sort of weird camp to learn how to get life skills, and her mom just like disappears. I've seen part of the first episode. And then she finds a portal, gets sucked into Ida's world. And she ends up going on various adventures, and the overall goal is trying to help this Demon King get his crown back. And Ida is on the run from certain kingdom authorities, and she has a sister. So when I first saw these promotional posters, and the images that were coming out, I was just going like, oh my freaking gosh, this looks amazing. I like the style, I like the expressions, I like the atmosphere, I like the environment, the way that everything is drawn. What is this about? And I dug into it, and this is part of the attraction when it comes to secular media, is the way that it looks. So when it comes to this particular one, and I'm talking from a Christian perspective, the context of the show, the way it was produced and what it's laced with is not good. Let me explain. So when the developers and producers and writers were talking about what it took inspiration from, a lot of it was actual witchcraft, Satanism, Wiccanism, a bunch of spell books. I'm not kidding. That went into the context of this show. A lot of the spells are actually inspired by real spell books, and I'm not going to have a debate whether or not people believe in that stuff. Again, I'm just talking about this from a Christian perspective. So you have that intertwined in the show, you have that context, and then you have, again, when I first heard about like the story about the Demon King, I'm just going like, that's not a poke at the Bible at all. So, anyway, look at this poster. The reason why this is the reason why I'm pointing out the show up, because look at the quality. You actually have these shows that take the time to express their characters, flesh out their characters, how the characters interact. Which a lot of Christian media, sorry, I'm trying to figure out what is going on outside my window. Oh, you have a lot of Christian media that fails to do this. They either have a very low budget, they try to belt out this stuff as much and as fast as possible. When you have shows like this that actually go out of their way to take their time, they know what they're trying to push, they know what they want to say. Another part and parcel with the show is the main character gets into a same-sex relationship with another girl. So that is also in the context of this show. I haven't seen the ending. I haven't seen much more past the plot, parts of the first episode, and some of the controversies have come out, like Disney suddenly canceling it because China didn't like it. That's a whole other bag of stuff. But so Christian media, like I said, in my opinion, if you want to compare the quality to secular media versus Christian media, you're gonna have secular media just outdo it tenfold, 100-fold, if not 1,000-fold. And that is the problem, because I don't think a lot of Christian companies or producers really understand a whole lot why people more are attracted to secular media. Also, something else too, relatability, certain issues being addressed or talked about. There's certain stuff, and I've talked about this on my channel before, how the church doesn't want to touch upon certain things, how youth pastors don't want to touch upon certain things. Christian media, there's certain things they won't touch upon either, or they'll allude to it a little bit, and then it's completely gone. So, and that's a really big problem, because the secular media, when it comes to songs, I have songs that I can relate to from the secular media sphere a lot more than I can the Christian ones. I got some Christian ones here and there that I really like. You have Porcelain Heart, Barlow Girl, Mirror Mirror. But what I have found for me is secular music. For me, there's much more that speaks to either my struggles, what I want to do in life. And granted, I haven't been in the Christian media sphere for quite a while. But at the same time, I don't want to be associated with it, because of the lack of quality, because it's more about pushing out the lessons, the agenda, than it is the actual story. When you have an actual good story, when you have actual good characters, you're going to have those lessons come a part of the story, be a part of the story naturally. Because a lot of times with Christian media, is the lesson kind of sticks out or is off-putting, doesn't make sense, and golly, go away. Sorry, someone's ripping their engine outside of my window. And it ends the way that you'd expect with the happy ending, which isn't realistic in life, and it's not realistic for a lot of kids' situations. And I'm not trying to take it to a deep, dark place, but for me personally, again, I had no really relation. There was nothing I can relate to when it came to Christian media. The characters, I mean, there was one cartoon I can look back on, and they've gone and they freaking destroyed it. They try to make it modernized and hip, and just it's freaking ugly to even look at now. I won't even touch it. But for those of you who grew up with the older version of Adventures in Odyssey, you have Mr. Whitaker, you have the Imagination Station, you have Dylan, you have Eugene, I forget the older sister's name, but that was done really, really well, and the animation style was really good. The characters were expressive, the interactions were normal. They actually touched upon some rather deep stuff, like you have an episode to where Dylan goes into a coma, and he has all these adventures, and he thinks he's in the Imagination Station. For those of you who are not quite aware of what I'm talking about, Mr. Whitaker was, I believe, a scientist / professor, and he created a machine to where you can go into it and it'll take you on an adventure where you want to go. It was actually really cool. So anyway, going back to Dylan being in a coma, Dylan thinks he's in the Imagination Station, and he's being chased around by this bad guy, and he ends up meeting someone, I think, with Nigel or Neil, and cut to the end of the show where he starts to hear Mr. Whitaker's voice come through the Imagination Station, which is not normal. And he finds out that the guy that he's been traveling with is an angel, and that the guy chasing him is Death. Because at the beginning of the show, it starts off with Dylan being in the Imagination Station and it glitching out and having problems, and Dylan trying to climb off a ladder, getting out, and suddenly just falling, and Mr. Whitaker like crying his name out, and that's kind of where it blacks out, and then Dylan wakes up in a whole different world. And so, dealing with death is a heavy topic, and in this case, in that particular episode, Death was trying to get Dylan, trying to chase him, and so that was kind of heavy. And then you had another one that deals with jail, a loved one going to jail. Mr. Whitaker was being framed for a very expensive, very high value jewelry theft, which, if anything you steal of high value here in the United States, you get quite a few years in jail. That was another thing that was dealt with. Suffice to say, the real bad guy was found, and found that he was wearing a face mask and all that stuff. But anyway, so that particular show, the older episodes and the older version before they revamped it, dealt with heavy stuff, and in my opinion, was executed well. You don't have a whole lot of shows like that anymore, at least from what I remember growing up. That was the one where I stuck with, where I would listen to the audio tapes as well. So like the audio tape I listened to had to do with Dylan and his friend listening to one of Mr. Whitaker's friends talking about how him and Mr. Whitaker found this pirate's treasure and came across two people, thieves, who tried to leave him in a cave to die and take off with the coins. Again, kind of heavy when you break it down, but it was executed really well. So, but that's few and far between. For any of you who has watched a YouTube channel on here called SaberSpark, he goes over a lot of cringy Christian media and just how bad it is. And it's not that he's targeting the Christian media specifically. He looks at badly animated shows, poorly executed shows. So he looks at all types of things and gets recommendations by his fans. And a lot of it he covers has to do with Christian or religious media and oh my gosh, it is some of the scariest crap I've ever seen animation wise. He even goes over something that I guess Mark Lowry and Bill Gaither, if you know who those guys are and grew up with them, they created this 3D animated thing where Mark Lowry was a fish. I don't know, still scary looking. The animation was that bad. I'd check out SaberSpark if I were you guys. He actually covers a lot of interesting stuff. Um, but when you have, again, low quality, and I cannot emphasize this enough because this is why I don't associate with the Christian media realm. I just know is due to how lazy it is, due to how just lacking it is. There's a lot of stuff that young people struggle with today that I don't think you find expressed in Christian media, that they refuse to touch upon, and they need to start doing so. Broken identity issues, and the stuff like with light lighters. There's potential for that to expand. You have a whole bunch of resources, a whole bunch of material that you can get inspiration, not spoof, because that's another problem Christian media has. You're spoofing the crap out of everything. Big Idea did this garbage for years. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Um, but yeah, oh, another big pet peeve of mine. But anyway, so you have visual inspiration. You have just so much stuff out there where you can look at and study and go, well, what attracts people to this? Can we create a natural feeling story that makes sense with character interactions and still put in biblical lessons? And it can be done, but it has to be done the right way. There was a movie that came out had to do with a dad being a football coach, and there was issues going on with the church, and there was a pastor, someone running to be a representative or politician, and he was going after everybody who sinned and calling them sodomites. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Hopefully, I don't remember the name. It came out quite a few years ago, and the main protagonist, was described as being too shiny, not flawed, kind of a male Mary Sue. Couldn't do any wrong, and that's not relatable. That just some of the themes in there had to do with how the church treated homosexuality. That's a complicated and nuanced issue within itself, and I don't know if that movie handled that correctly or properly. I have no idea, but the reviews I heard from the movie was the kid was not relatable by any means. So that is very much, you need to have your characters relatable. You need to have them interact naturally. There's just, I could go on like all morning about the plethora of problems Christian media has, and I showed you an example. And again, I'm not trying to shit on those guys, light lighters. There's potential there. But right now the execution is poor. And if there's like, I understand if you have very amateur graphic designers or illustrators. I keep looking out the window. I'm still an amateur artist myself, but I've taken the time to learn and grow, and I'm still learning. That is very important when growing your skill, is you have to still be willing to learn. And sometimes stuff does not work. It is not executed properly. We've seen this with High Guardian Spice, because they were more focused on the narratives that they wanted to push instead of the overarching story, how the world interacted with itself, what were the rules, and whatnot. You had a very poorly executed show that tried to have these narratives of toxic masculinity, that tried to push certain things, that try, like, just an example, and I've seen multiple review videos. I haven't watched the garbage show, but I've seen reviews enough to where I know what the show's about. To where the character Rosemary is very much a jerk. She's not really likable. That they push in there that all the guys in there are just toxic in one form or the other, and the one guy that's not is trans or whatnot. You have another character in there called Professor Caraway, and he represents a self-insert of the creator of the show, which is a woman trying to be a man named Rodriguez now. So there's all kinds of things. Again, poorly executed because all they wanted to do was push certain narratives in that show, and the heck with any actual storytelling or plot, or I mean, just type in High Guardian Spice review. You get so many review videos on that garbage show. It's not even funny. Plus the other controversial issues around it, which involved Crunchyroll not putting money towards actual Japanese anime studios, but instead creating this piece of crap show. One of the creators actually wanted to kill a man. So yeah, that's a whole ball of nope within itself. But so that's a perfect example, a secular example of when something pushes just narratives, and that's the main focus. And you lose plot lines, you lose character development, you lose any interaction with the environment, whether it be school, outside, the overall character growth, what the characters are striving to achieve, how they're going to do it with each other, if not by themselves, or a little bit of both. So, again, I could go on, but with Christian media and a lot of it with kids, it is too much focused on the lessons and not enough on the actual story, in my opinion, from what I've observed over the years. And until this changes, until you have, again, you have studios developing the 3D movie called David, when you have more people step up and do that, now I have to see, the graphics look amazing because there's actual textures. The bracelet he wears, go look up these images. David 3D animated movie, you'll see different textures in the bracelet he's wearing versus his shirt versus the sack or whatever the heck this thing is across his chest that he's wearing. So that's an example of a good one, but that's a few and far between. Anyway, hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. What are your guys' thoughts below? Did you guys grow up with Christian media? If so, what was the worst thing you saw? And can you actually go back and watch some of the stuff that you watched as a child? And if not, tell me why. Have a good one.